It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Vassar College head men's volleyball coach, Coach Richard Gary. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm great.
Can you talk about how you knew that you want to get started in coaching in college men's volleyball?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be an educator, so I started out in teaching actually, and I was teaching at Greek mythology and things that were related to my kooky master's degree and academic path, and then kind of found my way into coaching and was pretty much bit immediately. There's something holistic about being able to work with student athletes. You're dealing with them as real people, start to finish of their collegiate experience. There's just something really rewarding about that.
What was your experience like going to college and playing collegiate volleyball?
I didn't actually play collegiate volleyball in the U.S. When I went to college many years ago, before the internet, finding a college program was really challenging, and I was in a little bit of a bubble of no colleges around me that had men's volleyball. So I went to college without that as an aspiration, and then found my way into college volleyball when I went to grad school in England. The English university system had club programs, and I was able to not only in the first day of trying out for the club team at my college, I ended up being asked to be the captain and coach as well. And Because volleyball wasn't very strong in England, I ended up becoming one of the strongest players at that time in the country. Traveled for their university's team and things like that. So I had a really positive experience that way, but always felt I missed out on the opportunity to play here in the States. And I think that's when I recruit athletes, I'm always trying to help them find that opportunity just to fulfill kind of my own wishes a little on that.
What was that experience like getting involved in coaching on the collegiate level and first being assistant coach?
My first college program, I was full-time teaching and part-time coaching, and I didn't know anything about like kind of biomechanics. I had a decent understanding of teaching practices and pedagogy and how I would maybe explain and break down things. But the most important thing I learned was, if you're open about what you don't know and you continue to kind of grow and learn every day, I think it actually gave me a really nice outsider's take on the sport. I've never approached it as someone who had one way of doing things because I didn't come out of a college program that, I just follow how my coaches coached me. So I've always been discovering as I go kind of what my preferences are, how I want things to work, what motor learning practices we want to implement, and player bonding and things like that. I actually have a theater background as well, which is oddly helpful because there's such a collaborative element to putting on a production. And I feel like every season is some version of a production we're putting on. We're rehearsing and, and trying to get better every day and things like that. So.
For you, what was that experience like coaching both on the women's side and the men's side at Wells College?
Probably one of the best training grounds you could have as a coach to kind of never stop coaching. Every day was not women's season or men's season, but both. We had one experience where we came back on a Sunday after our women's conference championships, and Monday morning was men's practice, and it just never stopped. So it was a lot of time in the gym and a lot of opportunity to have a lot of trial and error. I see those players all the time, and I feel such a connection to them because I think I made like a million mistakes. I kind of think I make a million mistakes every year, but during that time, they were just really kind of maybe mistakes I think now would have been obvious, but I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so going through that process and learning from both those teams was really special. It was also kind of perfect that when the women season kind of got to that point where maybe they were sick of me, I moved over and would coach the men for a while, and they'd get a little recharge, and then when I went back to the women's group, they were ready for me again. So I'm a bit high energy, so it was a good experience for them to have little breaks while I kept learning.
Coming to Vassar, what was that experience like being the head coach for just the men's volleyball?
Yeah, stepping out of doing both and actually having a fall season where you could kind of process and plan and develop was a really great next step in my coaching evolution. For those 5 years at Wells, I felt like there was kind of never a time when I was able to just take a moment and take a beat and think about how do I want to get better for next year? How do I want to process? It was always kind of just solving the current crisis. And now at Vassar, you can kind of see these places where my coaching and philosophy and model for training and player development has kind of changed and evolved every year because I have that space. So that's been great. And even the difference in the number of people managing a smaller group is really helpful and being able to really build those personal relationships with everybody.
For you as a head coach, what was that feeling like stepping onto that men's volleyball court for the first time at Vassar?
Well, I came into a group that was really, really motivated. They had, I wouldn't say underperformed, but they definitely performed below what the talent they had felt like they should have been performing. And so they were really, really motivated when I walked in the gym. And for me, it was probably one of the easiest jobs in a way because they wanted it. They knew what they wanted to do, and I'm really collaborative. And so it allowed me kind of to kind of find my footing working with them. We had a couple of players who have become some of the most outstanding players in the Division III landscape, during that time, and they were fantastic collaborators with me and kind of guided me through what we were doing.
For you, what was that feeling like building upon the foundation of Vassar men's volleyball?
It's such a storied program. I tell the story a lot. My very first convention that I ever went to, I was a upstart new coach in 2008, and I had been in corporate America. I had been in teaching, but really for coaching, this was really the first year or two that I was in it. And at that convention, I paid for every event at the convention, and one of them was this banquet that turned out it was for coaches of the year and had nothing. I knew nobody there. It was not really for me. But the coach who had won it was the Vassar coach at the time, Jonathan Penn. And I got to meet him during that and apply to be his assistant and didn't get the job actually. And but it was a really, really positive exposure to Vassar and men's volleyball and what that experience might look like.
For you, what was that feeling like stepping onto that men's volleyball court for the first time?
My first experience over in the Netherlands working directly with men's team was really interesting because, Kathy de Boer used to say men battle to bond and women bond to battle. And so, a women's program has a lot more of that kind of the interpersonal that has to kind of exist before you even start. And then within the men's side, it was a little bit more, we're going to beat each other up. And through that, we're going to prove that we care about each other. It was a slightly different process. And on the men's side in particular, I had never experienced a level where players will absolutely dismiss you if they don't like feel that intense level of respect for who you are and what you're about. So, the very first question when I got to the Netherlands is like, what national team did you play for? And I said, I didn't. And then they said, well, what elite college program did you play for? And I said, I didn't. And they're like, well, why should we listen to you at all? And it was a very challenging process to kind of earn that trust and credibility. You had to learn not to put on airs. You had to learn to be collaborative and hear them and where they're at, and then speak from perspectives of, well, I hear what you're saying, and I think that, this could be a really useful thing. What do you think? And then dialogue with them instead of just saying, I need you to do X. If I went in and demanded things of them, the credibility wasn't there, and they weren't going to give me that. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced that. Because on the women's side, I for whatever reason, I think just because I still played at that time and I could go up and still bounce a ball on a women's height net and stuff. So it was a little easier for me to earn some credibility with them.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've started to build for Vassar's men's volleyball program?
Yeah, Vassar is a really special campus community. So yeah, I think that the culture was already kind of present here when I got here, and then my role was to make sure that I accentuated the structural advantages that we had. So the spatial sense of campus is that you from the dorms to the volleyball gym is very close, and everything is very community oriented. Everybody kind of recognizes everybody on the campus, and there's this sense of care. My first week on campus, I watched somebody drop a wallet while they were walking to the dining hall, and somebody walking behind them grabbed it, picked it up, and ran after them to give it to them. And there's just this sense of looking out for each other. And I had kind of been a big city guy before that. I was in Philadelphia and Boston and places where you drop that wallet and you're canceling your credit cards and, and hoping that they don't steal your ID. So it was a really, really different experience of the care for one another that everybody on the campus had. And that we ported that right into the team. So there was just an easy sense of being able to kind of create vulnerability and care and a sense of I don't get there if you don't get there. And so we all had to work together to achieve what we wanted.
Who are some of the teams in your conference that you compete against?
We're very fortunate. The UVC is one of the kind of more highly ranked programs. My first year, there were three at-large bids for the NCAA tournament, and the UVC got all of them. So that was a pretty special thing. We had six teams in the top 15 in the country at one point. And so we compete with MIT and NYU are probably two of the bigger academic names, and then St. John Fisher, Nazareth won a few championships. Newer program Hobart has been really, really successful. Elmira, so a little bit of Western New York as well.
What is that home game atmosphere like when teams like Nazareth comes to home versus going to RIT?
It's pretty special for us to have a volleyball only facility. We're one of the only schools that managed to take the basketball hoops out and have a sport court and nets up 24/7. And having that volleyball facility means that we can create a really, really nice volleyball culture on campus. We actually also, I think we have a team that is pretty popular as far as how they relate to the other people on campus. So I think like 70% of our fan base is just people who are friends with someone on the team. And it's a smaller space. So, when you're seating 300, 400 people, you can fill up really quickly. And so we get a really rowdy group. My second year, we actually hosted the NCAA tournament quarterfinals here, and our entire men's soccer team dressed up in cow outfits and dove on the court every time we scored a point. And it was just raucous and really special.
So far as head coach, what have been some of the things that you've been able to accomplish so far?
Probably the most important thing for me is that no year is the same as the year before. I've really, really kind of been excited that this is a place where I can just keep growing and learning. The people here, so the high academic environment of the students here, and also the high achieving type of personalities. Creates an environment where you've got to bring your A game every day. If you are a little sloppy in how you communicate, if you're a little bit unprepared for what you want to do in a training, they're going to let you know, and they're going to say we expect better from you. And so it's been really fun having that pushback and that sense of we all need to bring our A game to be at our best. There have been many, many times where a player will just simply say, I don't think you've thought that through well. You need to rethink that. And then we will like meet and kind of have a meeting of the minds and try to come up to a place where that collaboration can lead us to maybe even a third way. And so that's been my favorite thing as a head coach here has been how much I'm still able to learn like so much every single day.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes, and As a head coach, what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
It's an interesting process comparing this to Wells. When I was at Wells, probably 90% of the students that were in our mix were people that I reached out and found and approached. Vassar's been a little bit more known nationwide, and that helps a lot as far as probably it's more like 50-50 as far as the students that I reach out to versus the students that contact me and already have an existing knowledge of the school. So that's been huge. The academic constraints are really, really hard. We've had 4.0 students that get denied. We've had students with pretty excellent grades that didn't even make it through the first phase of our admission reviews. So that can be really challenging. The good side is that when somebody is accepted, they generally see that the value of the education is really, really high. This is one of those places where, because we have that 30, 40 year, it goes all the way back to the late 70s, the men's program, we have that group of alums that are just so wildly successful. The CEO for the Gap and Brian was the leader of inventing the Visa cell phone that became Apple Pay, and we have guys working at NASA and Citigroup and all over the country, and really, really amazing jobs. So it's pretty easy to kind of take that and be able to show a recruit what their prospective future looks like.
As a head coach, what is that like seeing those freshmen put on that Vassar jersey for the first time?
We're about to see it. They come back in a few days, and I'm pretty excited for them to be kind of absorbing that history. Actually, we had an alumni game this year thanks to a retiring coach. We actually ended up having 40, 50 guys from the history of the program come back, and I think it was really special for our players to see these people in their old jerseys, because we brought out old jerseys and let the alums take them, and we had some from 2000 and 2005, and there was a lot of ibuprofen and some jerseys that those guys were wearing as they played around with our current players. And so for someone who's number three to see three different people who were number three over their time and see that they were all Americans and that they had achieved so much and that they are doing so well in their life now. I'm pretty excited for the new guys to be tapping into that culture and history.
What is that like getting to see those seniors putting on that jersey for the last time?
That's probably the hardest part of the job. Every year, I think we are built on the success of the classes before. And what I have loved here is that I feel every group since my arrival here has left the program better than they found it. And that is the kind of the path. At the same time, I probably had a half dozen conversations with our senior class from just this last year, with them talking about how much they're missing it, how much they wish they had one more year in them, and wish that there were more opportunity for it. And there is something just really unique to the way that the time is organized in a collegiate athletic setting, where you'll probably never have a group that you can be as easily so close with every day, that you can work towards a common goal every single day. And if I don't do it, someone's going to show up on my doorstep tomorrow morning and say, let's do it together, and push you to your best. So that's been really, really special to see all those alums in the past going through that, and then to see these seniors right now. Our kind of trajectory of growth is that from freshman to sophomore year, we see the biggest growth, but from junior to senior year, we have the most risk of their brains blowing up a little as they start to think about the rest of their lives. And we want to both embrace that uncertainty and fear and excitement, and also help them kind of stay focused and in the moment on what their goals are this year. And so that's where we're at with our seniors right now.
What is that like as a head coach, getting to see them going into coaching or getting into playing professional volleyball?
We have few players that end up kind of passing on the financial opportunities to go into the business world or go into their careers. So we have probably a dozen, 2 dozen doctors right now in our alumni group that come back a lot. And if you get that window to med school, you're going. right? And you got to take that. We do have one player who's an alternate on the national team right now in Paris and who's playing professionally. And he put a hold on his other adventures in order to, make this run to be a professional player. Every player has kind of got to find that moment on their own. We have two or three on the current roster who have seen his model and want to kind of pursue that and see if they can move themselves in that direction. We'll see what happens. It's a pretty tough job. Not having a US based professional team makes it so that playing internationally can be a little lonely or a little tougher on for the social life, and definitely not as financially lucrative as most of the jobs these guys are getting offered out of Vassar. So.
What are some of your future plans for the men's volleyball program for Vassar moving
You
forward?
know, my goal every year is I think we are one of the better supported and better resourced programs in the country, and we're just so grateful to our campus for all the things that we have that allow us to be competitive. So every year, the expectation is that we should be competing for a championship, and that we want to have sustained success and a culture of sustained success. One of the programs that I think has always done that quite well. In April, which is our playoff season and NCAA run season, you walk into the locker room and there's letters litter up on the wall of the locker room from all the alums from the past saying this is the best month of the year. This is what you want to accomplish. And I think what we're looking for is to continue learning how to be great in that phase of the season and how to build to that and then how to sustain that year after year.
What advice would you give those freshmen entering their first year of college volleyball?
College is to me about the difference between have to and should. And so in high school, you just have so many things you have to do. You have to go to that class, you have to do this, you have to do that, and your parents are coordinating and organizing and mandating. In college, everything is about you should. You should stop playing that video game and get some sleep. You should write that paper 2 weeks before it's due so that you're ready to go and get the drafts. You should get to the weight room at 7 a.m., and get a lift in ahead of practice. But those are not very often mandated. So for us, being able to really manage your shoulds is kind of the process that we're trying to take our first years through. So how they manage their time, how they build and make public what their expectations and goals are for themselves, even down to just saying, hey, I'm going to tell three other people on the team, this is what my lifting program will be this week, and then they follow through on it better. They work together with their academics and make sure they stay on top of those things. It's really, just so many different things. You're drinking through a fire hose when you come into a college program. So being able to kind of keep your head about you, go one day at a time. We talk a lot about, what has been referred to as verbs versus nouns, so we want to be about our actions every day. We aren't about having a championship, which is a noun. We want to cultivate championship behaviors, which is the verb. So we're trying to every day figure out what those behaviors are and get better at them.
What advice would you give those college juniors transitioning into being seniors and leading the program?
We're pretty fortunate. The advice model that we have right now is that there have been every senior class is making sure that they understand their responsibility to leave the program in a great place. Was always worried that if we had kind of a level of success that the group after would feel that they're not being rooted for by the people who graduated because the people who graduated don't want them to surpass what they've done. And in fact, it's been exactly the opposite. I don't think we've had a week go by that somebody who is rising as a senior doesn't say, I just had a phone call with somebody who graduated last year and they were giving me this advice, or I just had a contact with somebody and they helped me through this real challenging pattern of self-talk that I was going through, or I was feeling this pressure about this thing and somebody helped me on that. So I think that they recognize their responsibility to pay that forward and to give that same gift to the next group. That makes my job, again, a lot easier. A lot of what we're dealing with is very individualized. Every person's needs are slightly different. And so having those upperclassmen as mentors really, really helps like solve problems before they would even need my advice.
What advice would you give those college seniors that have aspirations of playing professional volleyball?
It's possible. It's the most important thing related to college, moving from college to professional is you need to be okay with some of the cultural differences of playing overseas. Not having a U.S. tour means that our international volleyball world, skill-wise, you can do it. Can you handle 8 months of separation from your family and from your language very often? Can you handle being on a team that where a college team is all people in a similar phase of their life? When you go to a professional team, you have a 35-year-old with 3 kids who doesn't care about you at all. And so when you're in that setting, all of a sudden you're struggling with something, you're not going to have an upperclassman mentor. You're not going to have somebody who would support you. And that lack of community and support, it can be really, really isolating and difficult. I think you have to have a certain kind of makeup and inner strength and courage to be able to do that. It is a little easier now because Zoom and everything else does allow that maybe some of your support structure comes from your contacts that you can still have with all of your friends and family at home.
What advice would you give those players that have aspirations of getting into college coaching?
Coach is coach, right? So the most important thing you're trying to tap into is the care that goes along with it. I think you need to, well, really cultivate being your best self in order to, being as good as you can be as a listener, as a thinker, as a grower, as a learner. If you are a great learner, you're modeling great learning to other people. And so I think that when you're looking for college coaching opportunities, that becomes a big piece of the puzzle. The other aspect of it is there's jobs at all different levels, but the number of jobs limits gets limited, and the opportunities in men's coaching in particular is really, really small. So you have to expand what your concept maybe of coaching would be to club, high school. I think you really should get a full foundation of coaching at all different age groups, all different experience levels, so that you really get a taste for the sport and teaching it on a variety of levels.
What advice would you give those head coaches that look to have aspirations of coaching on the college level and running their own program?
There's so many great differences in coaching. I think that there are some things that correlate. That the majority of coaches have a similar behavior as far as having a level of kind of confidence and ability to solve problems and work independently and things like that. But beyond that, the idea that there's kind of one way of doing it. I have a group of coach friends, and out of the 5 or 10 of us, I don't think any of us coach the same way. We actually will watch each other's practices and say, well, I don't understand why you're doing that at all. So there's a million ways to do it. You need to be honest to kind of what is your growth process and how do you get better at what you do. It's about I think too often they say be yourself. Um, I don't think be yourself is always the best version. I think it's be the best version of yourself. Too many coaches use be yourself as an excuse to be abusive or to fly off the handle or not think before they speak. When in fact, being the best version of yourself, I think, is a little easier. I do think being true to your values and being true to who you are as a person is within what you're cultivating, I think, is important. If you I think too often coaches worry that they're not going to be respected, so they have to put on this face of intensity, even though they actually would like to be a little bit nicer in a moment, things like that.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you out on social media along with the program at?
We have Instagram. I'm probably one of the worst social media people. I think this is just a cultural thing of a certain age. I've just hit outside the threshold. So our Instagram is really the only place we live. Our players are on TikTok and all of that, but our Instagram feed is quite good. Vassar MVP and the players probably contribute most of that content, which I think is authentic again to our program because I want it to be a player-driven program. And so everything you see on that, even if it sounds like it's from me, is most likely somebody from the team who's posting to make sure they're make it sound like coaches engaging there too.
Thank you again, Coach Richard Gary, for your interview and best luck in your future at Vassar as the head men's volleyball coach.
Oh, thanks so much, Brandon. This has been really fun.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon. You can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Gary, for your interview and best luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.